Chapter 1. The Broken Down Car. The autumn rain hammered against the windshield of Marcus Johnson's 15-year-old Honda Civic as he navigated through the crowded streets of downtown Seattle. The wipers squeaked with each pass, a sound that had become as familiar as his daughter's laughter. At 32, Marcus carried the weight of single parenthood like a badge of honor, though some days it felt heavier than others. "Dad, my backpack's getting wet again," 8-year-old Emma complained from the back seat, holding up her school bag where a small puddle had formed from the persistent leak in the roof. "I know, sweetheart. Just hold it on your lap for now. We're almost at school," Marcus replied, his voice gentle despite the frustration gnawing at him. The car repair estimate from last week still sat crumpled in his pocket, $800 he simply didn't have. After dropping Emma off at Roosevelt Elementary, Marcus headed to his job at Pike Place Market, where he worked as a maintenance supervisor. The pay wasn't much, but it kept food on the table and a roof over their heads in their small Capitol Hill apartment. As he parked near the market, the familiar scent of fresh fish and coffee filled the air, mixing with the petrichor from the morning rain. The day dragged on with its usual routine of fixing broken freezers, unclogging drains, and ensuring the vendors had everything they needed. By 6 p.m., exhaustion weighed heavily on Marcus's shoulders as he made his way back to his car. The rain had stopped, but the October evening carried a chill that seeped through his worn jacket. As he approached the intersection of Pine Street and First Avenue, he noticed a sleek black Mercedes SUV pulled over to the side of the road, its hazard lights blinking rhythmically. A woman stood beside it, her shoulders shaking, not from the cold but from tears. She was impeccably dressed in a cream-colored blazer and designer jeans, her blonde hair pulled back in a perfect ponytail, but her polished exterior couldn't hide her obvious distress. Marcus slowed his pace, his innate compassion overriding his own exhaustion. As he got closer, he could see she was on the phone, her voice strained and desperate. "I don't care how much it costs, just send someone now. I have the Henderson merger tomorrow morning and I cannot be late." "What do you mean 4 hours? This is downtown Seattle, not the middle of nowhere." She ended the call abruptly and leaned against her car, covering her face with her hands. Marcus hesitated for a moment, knowing he should probably mind his own business. But the sight of someone in genuine distress was something he'd never been able to ignore. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said softly, stopping a respectful distance away. "I couldn't help but notice you seem to be having car trouble. Is everything okay?" The woman looked up, her green eyes red-rimmed from crying. She was strikingly beautiful, probably in her early 30s, with the kind of polished appearance that spoke of wealth and success. For a moment, she seemed taken aback by his approach, as if kindness from a stranger was foreign to her world. My car won't start," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've been here for an hour. The tow truck can't come until 10 o'clock, and I have the most important meeting of my career tomorrow morning. If I miss it..." Her voice trailed off as fresh tears threatened to spill. Marcus glanced at his watch. He needed to pick up Emma from after-school care by 7, but something in this woman's desperation resonated with him. He'd been in situations where everything felt like it was falling apart, where one small setback could unravel everything you'd worked for. "I'm not a mechanic, but I know a little about cars. Mind if I take a look?" he offered, already rolling up his sleeves. The woman, who introduced herself simply as Victoria, stepped aside as Marcus popped the hood. The engine bay was pristine, clearly well-maintained, but as he examined the various components, he spotted the problem almost immediately. "Your battery terminals are corroded, and one of the connections is loose," he explained, pointing to the green-white buildup around the battery posts. "Do you happen to have any tools in your car?" Victoria shook her head, looking helpless. "I don't even know what tools I would need." Marcus smiled reassuringly. "That's okay. I've got some in my car. Give me just a minute." He jogged back to his Honda, retrieving a small toolbox from his trunk, a necessity when you owned a car that broke down as often as his did. Within 15 minutes, he had cleaned the terminals and tightened the connections. "Try starting it now," he called out. Victoria turned the key, and the Mercedes purred to life immediately. The relief that washed over her face was profound, transforming her from a desperate woman to someone who looked like she could conquer the world. "Oh my God, thank you," she exclaimed, rushing around to where Marcus was closing the hood. "You have no idea what this means to me. Please let me pay you for your help." She reached into her purse, pulling out a wallet that looked like it cost more than Marcus made in a week, but he held up his hands. "No need," he said, wiping his hands on a rag. "Just glad I could help. We've all been there." Victoria stared at him as if he'd spoken a foreign language. "But you spent your time, You used your tools. And you would have done the same for someone else, right? Marcus replied with a warm smile that reached his eyes. That's what people do for each other. For a moment, Victoria was speechless. In her world of corporate mergers and million-dollar deals, every favor came with a price. Every kindness had an ulterior motive. This man, whose name she didn't even know, had stopped his evening to help a complete stranger and expected nothing in return. I'm Victoria Ashford, she said finally, extending her hand. Marcus Johnson, he replied, shaking her hand. Her skin was soft, a stark contrast to his calloused palms, but her grip was firm and genuine. Marcus, I mean it. I owe you. At least let me take you to dinner or something. There has to be some way I can repay you. Marcus checked his watch again and felt a familiar pang of anxiety. That's really kind of you, Victoria, but I need to pick up my daughter from school. Rain check? The sincerity in his voice, the mention of his daughter, the fact that he was walking away from what was clearly a wealthy woman's offer of repayment, it all struck Victoria as completely genuine. As she watched him walk away toward a beat-up Honda Civic, she felt something she hadn't experienced in years, curiosity about someone else's life. Marcus, she called out just as he reached his car. He turned back, his hand on the door handle. Thank you, she said simply. Really? He nodded, gave her that same warm smile, and drove away into the Seattle evening. As Victoria sat in her running Mercedes, she realized she was no longer thinking about the Henderson merger or the quarterly projections waiting on her desk. Instead, she found herself wondering about the man who had just restored her faith in human kindness and about the daughter he was hurrying home to see. Chapter 2. Coffee and Revelations. 3 days later, Marcus was walking through downtown Seattle during his lunch break when he spotted a familiar figure at a small coffee shop on 2nd Avenue. Victoria sat alone at a window table, her laptop open, but her attention seemed focused on the bustling street outside rather than the screen in front of her. The October afternoon sun streamed through the cafe windows, casting a warm glow that made the falling autumn leaves outside look like scattered gold coins. Marcus hesitated at the entrance of Grind Coffee, debating whether to go in. Part of him worried that their encounter the other night had been a moment out of time, and that approaching her now might somehow diminish the memory of that simple human connection. But Victoria looked up at that moment and spotted him through the glass. Her face lit up with genuine recognition and what appeared to be relief. She waved him over with an enthusiasm that surprised both of them. Marcus, what are the odds? She said as he approached her table, closing her laptop. Please sit down. I was just thinking about you. About me? Marcus asked, settling into the chair across from her. The cafe was busy with the lunch crowd, a mix of business people, college students, and tourists exploring Pike Place Market nearby. I wanted to thank you again for the other night, but I realized I never got your contact information. I've been hoping I'd run into you somewhere. Victoria signaled the barista. Please, let me buy you coffee. It's the least I can do. Marcus accepted, ordering a simple black coffee while Victoria had already been nursing what looked like an elaborate latte with foam art. As they settled into conversation, Marcus found himself studying her more closely than he had during their roadside encounter. Today, she seemed more relaxed, more approachable. Her business attire was still expensive, he could tell, but she'd rolled up her sleeves and loosened her hair from its corporate ponytail. So, how did your important meeting go? Marcus asked, stirring sugar into his coffee. Victoria's expression brightened immediately. Incredibly well, actually. The Henderson merger went through, and it was partly because I was able to review all my materials one more time that evening. If I had been stranded without my car until 10 o'clock, she shook her head. You literally saved my career that night. I doubt that, Marcus said with characteristic modesty. Someone as clearly capable as you would have figured something out. You don't understand. Victoria leaned forward, her green eyes intense. This merger has been my project for 8 months. I'm a senior partner at Ashford & Associates. It's a corporate law firm that specializes in mergers and acquisitions. Missing that meeting would have meant losing a $40 million deal and probably my partnership. Marcus nearly choked on his coffee. $40 million? And you're a senior partner? Victoria, exactly how successful are you? For the first time since he'd met her, Victoria looked uncomfortable, as if she'd revealed more than she intended. Let's just say I do well for myself, but that's not important. What's important is that a stranger took time out of his evening to help someone in need. That doesn't happen in my world very often. What do you mean? Victoria was quiet for a moment, watching a young mother push a stroller past the cafe window. In my line of work, every interaction is transactional. People are nice to me because they want something. A favorable contract, a referral, access to my clients. When you helped me the other night and wouldn't take any payment, I spent the entire drive home trying to figure out your angle. It took me until the next morning to realize that maybe there wasn't one. Marcus found this revelation both sad and fascinating. That sounds like a lonely way to live. It can be, Victoria admitted. But enough about me. Tell me about your daughter. How old is she? The shift in Marcus's entire demeanor was immediate and profound. His face softened, his eyes lit up, and his voice took on a warmth that made Victoria's chest tighten unexpectedly. Emma's 8, he said, pulling out his phone to show Victoria a recent photo. She's in 3rd grade at Roosevelt Elementary. Loves reading, hates math, and is convinced that our cat, Mr. Whiskers, can understand everything she says to him. The photo showed a beautiful little girl with Marcus's warm brown eyes and a gap-toothed grin, holding an orange tabby cat that looked less than thrilled to be in the picture. She's gorgeous, Victoria said softly. She has your eyes, and Mr. Whiskers looks patient. Marcus laughed. Patient is a good word for it. Emma rescued him from the alley behind our apartment building about 6 months ago. He was just a kitten then, all skin and bones. Now he rules our household with an iron paw. It's just the 2 of you? Victoria asked gently. Marcus's expression grew more serious. Yeah, it has been for about 3 years now. Emma's mom, well, let's just say she decided that motherhood wasn't for her. She moved to Los Angeles to pursue her acting career and hasn't been back since. I'm sorry, Victoria said, and Marcus could tell she meant it. That must be incredibly difficult. Some days more than others, Marcus admitted. But Emma's resilient, and we've figured out our rhythm. I work at Pike Place Market doing maintenance and facilities management. It's not glamorous, but it's steady, and the hours usually allow me to pick her up from school. Victoria did quick mental math. A maintenance worker's salary in Seattle, single father, an 8-year-old daughter, a 15-year-old car that needed repairs. She began to understand why Marcus had been in work clothes the other night, why he'd seemed genuinely tired, why he'd been more focused on getting home to his daughter than accepting any kind of reward. You mentioned the other night that your car needed repairs, she said carefully. Were you able to get that taken care of? Marcus's laugh had a rueful edge to it. Not exactly. The estimate was $800, which might as well be $8,000 right now. So Emma and I are just hoping it holds out until I can save enough to fix it. We've gotten pretty good at working around the leak in the roof and the temperamental starter. Without thinking, Victoria reached for her purse. Marcus, please let me help with that. It's the least I can do after what you did for me. But Marcus was already shaking his head before she'd finished speaking. Victoria, I appreciate the offer, I really do. But that's not why I told you about the car situation. I believe in being honest with people. But $800 is nothing to me, Victoria said, then immediately realized how that sounded. I mean, I don't mean to be insensitive. I know what you meant, Marcus said gently. And I'm sure it's not a lot of money to you. But it would mean everything to me to figure this out on my own. Does that make sense? Victoria stared at him, completely perplexed. In her world, problems that could be solved with money were solved with money, efficiently and without sentiment. The idea that someone would struggle with a financial challenge when the solution was sitting right in front of them was almost incomprehensible to her. Not really, she admitted, but I respect it. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the afternoon foot traffic on 2nd Avenue. Victoria found herself studying Marcus's profile as he watched a street musician set up his guitar case nearby. There was something incredibly peaceful about his presence, a groundedness that she rarely encountered in her high-stress corporate environment. Can I ask you something? Victoria said finally. Sure. The other night when you helped me, did you know my car was expensive? Could you tell I had money? Marcus considered the question seriously. I could tell you weren't struggling financially if that's what you're asking. But honestly, Victoria, I would have helped regardless. If you'd been standing next to a broken-down Honda like mine, I still would have stopped. Why? Because that's what people do, Marcus said simply. Or at least that's what people should do. When I was growing up, my mom always told me that we're all just walking each other home. Sometimes someone needs help. Sometimes you're the one who can provide it. Victoria felt something shift inside her chest, a warmth that had nothing to do with the coffee. Your mother sounds like a wise woman. She was, Marcus said softly. Cancer took her about 5 years ago, but she taught me that being rich or poor doesn't have anything to do with how much money you have. It's about how much you give of yourself to others. The weight of that statement settled over Victoria like a blanket. She thought about her own life, the luxury condo overlooking Elliott Bay, the expensive dinners at high-end restaurants, the designer clothes hanging in her walk-in closet. Then she thought about Marcus, who had given freely of his time and skill to help a stranger, who was raising his daughter with love and integrity despite financial struggles, who found richness in simple moments and genuine connections. "I should probably get back to work," Marcus said, checking his phone. "But I'm really glad we ran into each other. It was nice to see you again, Victoria." As he stood to leave, Victoria felt a sudden panic at the thought of this being their last conversation. "Marcus, wait. Would you maybe like to have dinner sometime? I mean, as friends. I'd love to meet Emma, if that would be okay." Marcus paused, clearly considering the offer carefully. "That's really kind of you, Victoria. But honestly, I'm not sure we have much in common. You're a corporate lawyer with a $40 million merger, and I'm a maintenance guy trying to keep my car running long enough to get my daughter to school. Maybe that's exactly why we should be friends," Victoria said quietly. "Maybe we could learn something from each other." Marcus looked at her for a long moment, seeing something in her expression that he hadn't noticed before, a loneliness that matched his own, a yearning for authentic connection in a world that seemed increasingly superficial. "Okay," he said finally, "but dinner's at my place. Emma makes a mean grilled cheese sandwich, and I'm pretty good with tomato soup. No fancy restaurants." Victoria's smile was radiant. "That sounds perfect." As Marcus walked back toward Pike Place Market, Victoria sat in the coffee shop for another hour, staring out the window but not really seeing the street. For the first time in years, she was looking forward to something that had nothing to do with work, money, or professional advancement. She was looking forward to spending time with a man who had shown her that kindness still existed in the world, and to meeting the little girl who was clearly the center of his universe. Outside, the autumn afternoon was giving way to evening, and the streetlights were beginning to flicker on. Victoria pulled out her phone and canceled her dinner reservations at the high-end restaurant, where she'd planned to wine and dine a potential client. Instead, she spent the rest of the afternoon thinking about grilled cheese sandwiches and wondering what it would feel like to be part of a real family, even for just one evening. Chapter 3. Dinner and Discoveries. The following Saturday evening, Victoria stood outside a modest apartment building in Seattle's Capitol Hill neighborhood, holding a bottle of wine that probably cost more than most people's weekly grocery budget. She'd changed clothes 3 times, finally settling on jeans and a simple sweater, the most casual outfit she owned, though it still probably cost more than most people would spend on an entire wardrobe. The building was older, with worn brick and fire escapes that spoke of Seattle's working-class history. As she climbed to the 3rd floor, Victoria could hear the sounds of family life filtering through thin walls, children laughing, televisions playing, the clatter of dinner dishes. It was a symphony of ordinary life that felt both foreign and oddly comforting to someone who lived in a luxury condo where the walls were thick enough to maintain perfect silence. Apartment 3B had a small wreath on the door made of autumn leaves, clearly crafted by a child's hands. Victoria knocked gently, and within seconds, the door swung open to reveal Marcus, wearing jeans and a Seattle Mariners t-shirt. He looked more relaxed than she'd ever seen him, and his smile was genuinely welcoming. "Victoria! Come in, come in. Emma's been excited about meeting you all week." The apartment was small but immaculately clean and filled with warmth. The living room had a worn but comfortable couch, bookshelves made from boards and cinder blocks, and children's artwork covering one entire wall like a gallery of childhood creativity. The space was tiny compared to Victoria's condo, but it felt more like a home than anywhere she'd ever lived. "Dad, is that her?" came a voice from the kitchen, and a moment later, Emma appeared in the doorway, wearing a bright purple dress and a shy smile. She was even more beautiful in person than in her photograph, with an infectious energy that seemed to fill the small space. "Emma, this is Victoria. Victoria, this is my daughter Emma, and that orange blur you see darting between your legs is Mr. Whiskers." Victoria looked down to see the cat from the photograph weaving around her ankles, purring loudly. "Hello, Emma. It's so nice to meet you." "And hello, Mr. Whiskers." Emma giggled. "He likes you already. He usually hides when new people come over." Victoria knelt down to pet the cat, and Emma immediately warmed up to her. "Dad told me you're a lawyer. Do you help put bad guys in jail?" "Not exactly," Victoria laughed. "I help companies when they want to work together or buy each other. It's not as exciting as catching bad guys." "Oh," Emma said, clearly a little disappointed. "Well, that's okay. Dad says all jobs are important." As Marcus led them into the kitchen, Victoria was struck by how efficiently the small space was organized. Everything had its place, and despite the obvious budget constraints, The apartment felt welcoming and lived in. The kitchen table was set for three, with mismatched plates and glasses that somehow looked more charming than her complete set of designer dinnerware. "I hope you're hungry," Marcus said, ladling tomato soup into bowls. "Emma's been practicing her grilled cheese technique all week." Emma beamed with pride. "I use two kinds of cheese now, cheddar and Swiss. Dad taught me how to butter the bread on both sides so it gets really crispy." The dinner was simple but delicious, and Victoria found herself relaxing in a way she hadn't in years. Emma chattered throughout the meal, telling Victoria about school, her friends, her favorite books, and her ongoing efforts to teach Mr. Whiskers to sit on command. "He's very smart," Emma explained seriously. "He just chooses not to listen most of the time. Dad says that's called being independent." "Your dad sounds very wise," Victoria said, glancing at Marcus, who was watching his daughter with obvious adoration. "He is," Emma agreed. "He helps me with my homework even when he's tired, and he reads to me every night before bed. We're reading Charlotte's Web right now. Do you know that book?" "I do," Victoria said. "It's one of my favorites." "Really? What's your favorite part?" As Victoria found herself discussing E.B. White's classic with an enthusiastic 8-year-old, she realized she couldn't remember the last time she'd had a conversation that wasn't about contracts, deadlines, or billable hours. Emma's perspective on the book, her concern for Wilbur, her admiration for Charlotte's cleverness, her questions about friendship and sacrifice, reminded Victoria of what it felt like to see the world with wonder and possibility. After dinner, Emma insisted on showing Victoria her room, which she shared with Mr. Whiskers. The space was tiny but clearly Emma's domain, with a twin bed covered in a handmade quilt, shelves full of books and stuffed animals, and more artwork on the walls. "Dad made those shelves for me," Emma said proudly, pointing to the book collection. "And Grandma Johnson made that quilt before she went to heaven. Dad says she would have loved me very much." Victoria's throat tightened as she imagined Marcus carefully building shelves for his daughter, creating a space where she could feel secure and loved despite their financial limitations. The quilt was clearly handmade with love, each square a different pattern in soft pastels. "It's beautiful," Victoria said softly. "Your room is perfect." "Do you want to see my favorite book?" Emma asked, pulling a worn copy of The Secret Garden from the shelf. "Dad found it at a used bookstore for my birthday. It's about a girl who finds a hidden garden and makes it beautiful again." As Emma flipped through the pages, showing Victoria her favorite illustrations, Victoria found herself thinking about hidden gardens and second chances, about the beauty that could bloom in the most unexpected places. When they returned to the living room, Marcus was cleaning up the kitchen. Victoria automatically moved to help, but he waved her off. "You're a guest," he said. "Besides, Emma and I have our routine down to a science." Victoria watched as father and daughter worked together, Emma standing on a step stool to dry dishes while Marcus washed. They moved around each other with practiced ease, and their conversation was filled with inside jokes and gentle teasing. It was clear that this evening routine was one of many small rituals that had grown up between them, creating a sense of stability and normalcy in their small world. "Dad, can Victoria see my treasure box?" Emma asked as they finished. Marcus smiled. "If she wants to." Emma ran to her room and returned with a small wooden box that looked like it had been made in someone's basement workshop. She opened it carefully to reveal a collection of small treasures: smooth rocks from the beach, a pressed flower, a ticket stub from the zoo, a photograph of her and Marcus at what looked like a school carnival. "These are my most important things," Emma explained, handling each item with reverence. "Dad says everyone should have a treasure box for the things that make them happy." Victoria picked up the photograph, which showed Marcus and Emma on what was clearly a makeshift carnival ride, both of them laughing with pure joy. "This is a beautiful picture." "That's from my school's fall festival last month," Emma said. "Dad won me a stuffed elephant playing the ring toss game. He had to try 17 times, but he didn't give up." Victoria looked at Marcus, who was clearly embarrassed by his daughter's praise. 17 times? "It was rigged," Marcus said defensively, but he was smiling. "And it was worth it to see her face when I finally won." As the evening wound down, Emma began to show signs of tiredness, though she was clearly reluctant to see Victoria leave. Marcus sent her to brush her teeth and get ready for bed, promising that Victoria would still be there when she was done. "She's incredible," Victoria told Marcus as they sat on the couch. "You're raising an amazing little girl." "I'm trying," Marcus said, and Victoria could hear the weight of single parenthood in those two words. "Some days I feel like I have no idea what I'm doing. I worry that she's missing out on things because I can't provide them." "What kinds of things?" Marcus was quiet for a moment, staring at his hands. "Dance lessons. She loves to dance, but classes are expensive. A bigger place to live. She deserves her own room, not to share with a cat. College savings. I'd put away what I can, but at this rate, she'll graduate high school with maybe enough saved for one semester of community college. Victoria felt her heart breaking for this man who was clearly doing everything in his power to give his daughter a good life. Marcus, you're giving her something more valuable than dance lessons or a big house. You're giving her security, love, and attention. Do you see how she looks at you? You're her hero. Before Marcus could respond, Emma reappeared in the doorway, wearing pajamas covered in cats that matched Mr. Whiskers, who had apparently taken up residence on Victoria's lap. Victoria, will you come back and visit us again? Emma asked, climbing onto the couch next to her father. I'd love to, Victoria said, surprised by how much she meant it. If your dad says it's okay. Dad? Marcus looked at Victoria, and she saw something in his expression that made her chest tighten. Of course she can come back. Victoria's our friend now. As Emma hugged Victoria goodnight, Victoria was struck by how natural the embrace felt, how right it seemed to be part of this evening routine. She couldn't remember the last time someone had hugged her just because they wanted to, without expecting anything in return. After Emma went to bed, Victoria and Marcus sat on the couch talking quietly. She told him about her own childhood, the nannies, the boarding schools, the parents who loved her but were always too busy with their careers to really be present. Marcus talked about his own upbringing, raised by a single mother who worked 2 jobs but always made time for bedtime stories and homework help. I want to give Emma what my mom gave me, Marcus said. The feeling that she's the most important thing in the world to someone. You're already doing that, Victoria assured him. It's obvious in everything. The way you look at her, the way you've organized your entire life around her needs. She's lucky to have you. As Victoria prepared to leave, she realized that she didn't want the evening to end. The apartment, which had seemed so small when she arrived, now felt like a refuge from the cold, competitive world she inhabited every day. Here, surrounded by mismatched furniture and a child's artwork, she had felt more at peace than she had in years. Thank you for this, she said as Marcus walked her to the door. I can't remember the last time I enjoyed an evening this much. Thank you for coming, Marcus replied. Emma's already planning what she wants to cook for you next time. As Victoria walked back to her car, she turned to look up at the apartment building. She could see the warm glow of lights in Marcus and Emma's windows, and she imagined them going through their nighttime routine. Marcus reading to Emma, the cat settling in for the night, the small family completing another day together. Driving back to her luxury condo, Victoria felt a profound shift in her perspective. The high-end restaurants, the designer clothes, the expensive wine, none of it felt as valuable as what she had experienced in that small apartment. For the first time in her adult life, she had been part of something real, something that mattered in a way that transcended money or professional success. As she prepared for bed in her perfectly decorated but empty condo, Victoria found herself thinking about treasure boxes and pressed flowers, about the way Emma had trustingly shown her the things that mattered most to her. And she realized that tonight, in a small apartment in Capitol Hill, she had discovered treasures of her own. Chapter 4. The Heart of the Matter. 2 weeks later, Victoria found herself making regular stops at the coffee shop on 2nd Avenue, hoping to run into Marcus again. Their dinner at his apartment had left her feeling unsettled in the best possible way, as if she'd discovered a completely different way of living that made her own existence feel hollow by comparison. When she finally spotted him through the window on a rainy Thursday afternoon, she waved him in with an enthusiasm that surprised even her. This is becoming a habit, Marcus said with a smile as he joined her at her usual table by the window. Are you stalking me, Victoria Ashford? Maybe a little, Victoria admitted, and they both laughed. I was hoping to ask you something. Marcus settled into his chair, noting that Victoria seemed different today, more nervous, less polished than usual. What's on your mind? Emma mentioned that she loves to dance, but that classes are expensive, Victoria began carefully. There's a wonderful studio called Movement Arts in Belltown that offers scholarships for kids who can't afford full tuition. I was wondering if you'd consider letting me help Emma apply. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, studying Victoria's face. How do you know about Movement Arts? Victoria felt heat rise in her cheeks. I may have done some research. And by research, I mean I called around to every dance studio in Seattle asking about scholarship programs. Victoria, before you say no, just hear me out, Victoria said quickly. This isn't charity. It's a legitimate scholarship program. Emma would have to audition, and if she's accepted, she'd be earning her spot based on her talent and enthusiasm. I'd just be helping with the application process. Marcus was still hesitant, But Victoria could see she'd struck the right chord by emphasizing Emma's merit rather than just offering to pay for lessons. What would my role be in all this? You'd drive her to the audition, of course, and if she gets in, you'd take her to classes. I'd just be moral support. After a long pause, Marcus nodded. Okay, but if this is some elaborate way to give us money? It's not, Victoria said firmly. I promise. The following Saturday, Victoria found herself in Marcus's Honda Civic, driving to Movement Arts Studio with an unusually quiet Emma in the back seat. The 8-year-old had been chattering excitedly all week about the audition, but now that it was actually happening, nerves had set in. What if I'm not good enough? Emma asked in a small voice. Marcus caught her eye in the rearview mirror. You just have to do your best. That's all anyone can ask. But what if my best isn't good enough? Victoria turned around in her seat. Emma, can I tell you a secret? I'm nervous too. You are? Why? Because I care about you, and I want this to go well for you. But you know what I realized? Being nervous means we care about something. And caring about something, really caring, is actually pretty wonderful, even when it's scary. Emma considered this seriously. So being nervous is okay? Being nervous is perfectly okay, Victoria assured her. It means you're brave enough to try something that matters to you. Movement Arts turned out to be a converted warehouse space with soaring ceilings, exposed brick walls, and large windows that flooded the studios with natural light. The scholarship auditions were being held in the main studio, where about 15 other children waited with their parents. Victoria was struck immediately by the diversity of the families present. Some parents looked like they belonged in her usual social circle, professionally dressed, clearly well off. But others, like Marcus, were obviously working-class parents who had somehow scraped together the resources to give their children this opportunity. The common thread was the hope and love she could see in every parent's face as they watched their children prepare to chase their dreams. Emma's audition was simple but comprehensive. She had to learn a short combination taught by one of the instructors, perform it for the panel, and answer a few questions about why she wanted to dance. Victoria and Marcus watched from chairs set up for parents, and Victoria found herself gripping the edge of her seat as Emma moved through the routine. The little girl was clearly untrained, but she had natural rhythm and an infectious joy in movement that made it impossible to look away from her. When she stumbled slightly during a turn sequence, she recovered with a laugh and kept going, and Victoria saw several of the judges smile. During the interview portion, Emma spoke with the same honesty and enthusiasm that had charmed Victoria from their first meeting. "Why do you want to dance?" asked Ms. Rodriguez, the studio director. "Because when I dance, I feel like I'm flying," Emma said simply. "And because my dad says when you find something that makes you feel like the best version of yourself, you should hold on to it." Victoria glanced at Marcus, who was watching his daughter with such pride that it made her chest ache. She realized that this moment, sitting in a dance studio, watching a little girl chase her dreams while her father beamed with love, was worth more to her than any merger she'd ever closed or any case she'd ever won. The results wouldn't be announced for a week, but Emma bounced out of the audition with renewed confidence. "I think I did good," she announced. "Did you see when I did that spin? I didn't fall down." "You were amazing," Victoria said, and she meant it. Absolutely amazing. On the drive home, Emma chattered about the other kids she'd met and the beautiful studios, but Victoria found herself mostly quiet, processing what she'd witnessed. Marcus seemed to understand her mood, occasionally catching her eye with a knowing smile, but not pushing her to talk. That evening, Victoria declined Marcus's invitation to stay for dinner, claiming she had work to catch up on. But instead of going home to her condo, she found herself driving aimlessly through Seattle's neighborhoods, thinking about the day and what it had revealed about her own life. The call came on Tuesday evening while Victoria was reviewing contracts in her home office. She'd given Marcus her number specifically so he could update her about the audition results, but when her phone rang with his name on the display, her heart raced as if her own future was hanging in the balance. "Victoria," she got in. Marcus's voice was filled with wonder. "Emma got the scholarship, full tuition for the entire year, and they want her to start this Saturday." "Oh my God, Marcus, that's incredible." Victoria found herself tearing up with an intensity that surprised her. "How is Emma handling the news?" "She cried," Marcus said, his own voice thick with emotion. "Happy tears. She keeps saying she can't believe it's real. And Victoria, the studio director called me personally. She said Emma had one of the most joyful auditions she'd seen in years. She said they weren't just offering her a scholarship because of financial need. They genuinely want her in their program because of her potential. I'm so happy for her, for both of you." Victoria, I need to ask you something, and I want you to be honest with me. Victoria's stomach clenched. Okay. The scholarship. Did you— No, Victoria said firmly. Marcus, I swear to you, I had nothing to do with their decision. I helped with the application paperwork, but Emma earned this on her own merit. There was a long pause, and Victoria could almost hear Marcus processing her words, deciding whether to trust her. I believe you, he said finally. And even if you had influenced their decision somehow, I think I'd still be grateful. Emma's happiness is worth more to me than my pride. She earned this, Victoria repeated. You both did. You raised a remarkable little girl, Marcus. After they hung up, Victoria sat in her office for a long time, staring out at Elliott Bay through her floor-to-ceiling windows. The view was spectacular. City lights reflecting on the water, ferries moving back and forth like distant fireflies. But for the first time since she'd bought the condo, the view felt empty rather than impressive. She thought about Emma's joy when she'd learned she'd gotten the scholarship, about Marcus's pride in his daughter's achievement, about the way they'd celebrated with excited hugs and plans for Emma's first real dance class. In her own life, professional successes were marked with expensive dinners and champagne that tasted like obligation rather than celebration. That weekend, Victoria found herself at Movement Arts again, not because she'd been invited, but because she couldn't stay away. She sat in the observation area watching Emma's first class, marveling at how quickly the little girl picked up the basic positions and how her face glowed with concentration and happiness. Marcus appeared beside her during the halfway point of the class. I saw your car in the parking lot, he said. You didn't have to come. I wanted to, Victoria said simply. Is that okay? It's more than okay, Marcus replied, settling into the chair next to her. Emma asked this morning if you might come watch. She was disappointed when I said I didn't know. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching Emma work through basic ballet positions with intense focus. Victoria found herself thinking about the different kinds of wealth she'd witnessed in her life, and how the richness she was observing now. A father's love for his daughter, a child's pure joy in learning something new, the simple pleasure of sharing important moments with people who mattered, seemed more valuable than anything she'd accumulated in her years of professional success. Marcus, Victoria said suddenly, can I ask you something personal? Sure. Do you ever think about dating? I mean, since Emma's mom left? Marcus was quiet for so long that Victoria worried she'd overstepped, but when he finally spoke, his voice was thoughtful rather than offended. Sometimes, he admitted, but it's complicated. Any woman who comes into my life has to understand that Emma comes first. Always. And honestly, most people I meet either can't handle that level of commitment to someone else's happiness, or they see Emma as an obstacle rather than a blessing. Victoria felt something shift in her chest, a clarity she hadn't experienced before. What if they saw her as a blessing? What if they understood that loving you means loving her too? Marcus turned to look at Victoria directly, and she saw something in his expression that made her breath catch. Are we still talking hypothetically? I don't know, Victoria said honestly. Maybe not. They were interrupted by the end of class, as Emma came bounding over with her cheeks flushed from exertion and her eyes bright with excitement. Did you see me do the Port de Bras? She asked Victoria breathlessly. Ms. Rodriguez said I have good natural turnout. I don't know what that means, but she seemed really happy about it. I saw everything, Victoria said, pulling Emma into a hug that felt as natural as breathing. You were absolutely beautiful out there. As they walked to the parking lot together, Emma between Victoria and Marcus, Victoria realized that somewhere along the way, her feelings for this small family had evolved into something much deeper than friendship. She was in love, not just with Marcus, though her feelings for him were growing stronger every day, but with the life they had built together, with the way they took care of each other, with the possibility of being part of something real and meaningful. That evening, after they'd celebrated Emma's successful first class with pizza and ice cream, Victoria found herself reluctant to leave their small apartment. As Emma got ready for bed, Marcus walked Victoria to the door. Thank you, he said simply, for all of this, for caring about Emma, for helping with the scholarship application, for being here today. It means more than you know. Thank you for letting me be part of it, Victoria replied. I know this might sound crazy, but these past few weeks, getting to know you and Emma, have been the happiest I can remember being in a long time. Marcus stepped closer, and Victoria could see the same realization in his eyes that she'd been grappling with. Victoria, I need you to know something. When I helped you that night with your car, I was just trying to do the right thing. I had no idea you were going to change my entire world. Change your world? You've made me remember what it feels like to hope for something beyond just getting through each day, Marcus said softly. To imagine what it might be like to share this life Emma and I have built, to have someone who cares about her happiness as much as I do. Victoria felt tears she hadn't expected sting her eyes. Marcus, I've spent my entire adult life accumulating things I thought would make me happy. Money, success, a beautiful home. But sitting in your living room, watching you read to Emma, seeing how much you love each other, I realized I've been collecting the wrong things. I want to be part of this. I want to be part of your family. Before Marcus could respond, they heard Emma's voice calling from her bedroom. Dad? Is Victoria still here? I forgot to tell her something. Marcus smiled. You better go see what she wants. Victoria found Emma sitting up in bed, with Mr. Whiskers curled up beside her. I forgot to tell you something important, Emma said seriously. Today, at dance class, when you were watching me, it felt like having a mom there. I know you're not my mom, but it felt really good to have someone there who cared about me that much. Victoria's throat tightened with emotion. Emma, I do care about you that much. More than you know. Good, Emma said with satisfaction. Because I was hoping you might want to be part of our family. We could use another girl around here to balance out Dad and Mr. Whiskers. Victoria laughed through her tears. I would love that more than anything in the world. Okay then, Emma said, settling back into her pillow with the casual acceptance of childhood. That's settled. Good night, Victoria. Good night, sweetheart. When Victoria returned to the living room, Marcus was waiting for her with an expression of wonder and hope that made her heart race. Did you hear that? Victoria asked. Every word, Marcus said, reaching for her hands. And in case you were wondering, Emma speaks for both of us. We'd love to have you as part of our family. As Victoria kissed Marcus for the first time in the doorway of their small apartment, with the sounds of Seattle settling into evening around them, she realized that the broken-down car that had brought them together had actually been the beginning of the greatest repair job of her life. Not the repair of an engine, but the repair of her own heart, which had been running on empty for longer than she'd realized. 6 months later, Victoria would sell her luxury condo and move into a larger apartment in Capitol Hill, still modest by her previous standards, but spacious enough for a family of 3 and one very spoiled cat. She would discover that the best treasures weren't the ones that could be bought, but the ones that were freely given. Emma's gap-toothed grin when she mastered a difficult dance combination, Marcus's quiet strength as he navigated the challenges of single parenthood, and the overwhelming love that grew between them, like the secret garden in Emma's favorite book, something beautiful that bloomed when tended with care, patience, and genuine affection. The poor single dad who had helped a woman in tears had indeed been helped in return, though not in the way either of them had expected. Sometimes the greatest wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in the richness of a life shared with people who see your heart and choose to love it exactly as it is.